Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to our Tuesday virtual roundtable. We're glad that you're here fresh off of Easter weekend. And we're glad that you are alive. You made it through the weekend. You're pumped about being on the call today. We've got our good friend Steve Miller with us, who we're going to be hearing from in just a couple minutes. Hope you had an exciting Easter. I know it was for us. I was just telling some of the guys we were expecting really bad weather and actually had really good weather. And so that was nice to have on Easter. Hope all of you had a good Easter weekend. May call on a couple of you to share just kind of how your Easter was. But before we do, I'm going to call on Jeremy Rands to open us up in a word of prayer, or call on someone to open us up. And we're glad to have each of you with us today. Jeremy?
Hey guys, good to see you today. Hope you again had a great weekend. Hey Nick, I'm going to ask you to open in prayer. I want to also thank you. I know you reached out to several guys before Easter, wrote them a note, and just to let them know you were praying for them. And I want to thank you for that. Thank you for encouraging guys within the network and your pastor friends. That was just refreshing. I got back from Poland and had a couple letters, and yours was one of them. And so thank you. Thank you for caring. So why don't you open us in prayer and ask the Lord to bless our meeting today?
Sure. Let's pray. Yeah, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this opportunity that we have gathered together to learn from one another, to gain new ideas. God, we thank you for how you worked in churches throughout Easter. Lord, whether there were attendance records broken, salvations, or whether, Father, it was just the hometown crowd. Lord, we know you work even when we don't see it. And so I ask for encouragement for those guys who may not have seen the same results that others had, that you encourage their hearts to know that, Lord, you bring the growth and that you work even when we don't see it. But we also do thank you for the salvations and the next steps that we're taking in people's faith. And we just want to give you glory and honor for that. Thank you for each person here, and just ask that you would continue to work in their ministry and in their lives. Lift up Steve as he prepares to share with us, that you would give him the wisdom and the words to share with each of us, and that we would receive it and gain something from it today. We love you. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Nick. Hey, if there's a couple guys that are on here that would like to share a little bit about what their Easter weekend was like, I don't want to take a lot of time because I want to get to Steve and his topic today. Are there any guys that just want to shoot your hand up and say, hey, I'll share 30 seconds or less of what Easter was like for you? Anybody want to jump on and tell us what happened Easter weekend for you, your church, your ministry? Maybe it was great. Maybe it was awful. Maybe you want to share. Steve, go ahead.
I want to nominate Morris Enriquez because I want to know how many connection cards were in that picture.
All right, Morris, you're up, man.
Rebecca just took it from my office, so I have no idea. But
I tried to count. I tried to count in the picture, but I wasn't sure how many.
I'll find out. I'll have her bring it over. But I'll tell you, we had a record day, right around 400. We think we had more than that because we had a lot of people in this community come by. I'll just tell you this. I talked to Kurt Skelly, and we're talking about kind of how we promoted this. And I'll tell you, I did something very easy that was free, and we just did Eventbrite. In our community here, you could spend $10,000, $20,000. Our area, they're going to be looking for it. And we had so many people come just as a result of that one thing. Now, we had banners and invites and all of that, but I'm telling you, it was just a free way to advertise, and people came. It was phenomenal. We had probably around 10 people or so get saved and a lot of follow-up. But it was all the Lord. We saw so many people that jumped in and served that had never served. Our church is just pumped, just wants to do whatever they can to see people come to Christ. We had so many people invite people, and they came. So phenomenal weekend for us. At least in the 7 years I've been here, that was our biggest Sunday ever. So that was awesome. Thanks, guys.
Outstanding. Thanks, Morris. I appreciate you sharing that. Anybody else want to go 30 seconds or less? Tell us about your weekend.
Yeah, I nominate Tony. Tony, I saw you had a great weekend.
We did. You guys know that we normally do a drama. And so this year was really different for us not to do a drama. And we had 964 people. We had 13 people that accepted Christ through a digital Connect card, which we've never done, or that's new for us because we usually have them come forward, but we dealt with them in their seat and they filled out the digital Connect card. So now we get to spend this week following up, and we have all that information and stuff. So it was pretty exciting. God bless in a big way. So we're really pumped.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Walter, I see your hand raised. You got something to say, Walter?
Yeah, we did something a little bit different. We had an egg hunt at 11 a.m. on Sunday morning, and we had about 150 people show up for that. About 50 different, at least 50 different families. We are, we moved our normal service up an hour. So we had our service at 10 instead of 11. And then at 11 o'clock, we just served our community, and we had a lot of good decisions made.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing, Walter. I'm going to nominate one more and then we'll get to it. Steve, I see you shaking your head there, man. Tell us what happened. Steve, what was on for you? Yeah, Chevron.
Hey guys, man, we had a really great weekend as well. For us, we had 123, which is double since we've gotten here in the last 18 months. We had 3 people trust Christ over the weekend, and I just mailed out 21 Connect cards or 21 guest letters. So it was just a super day for us, and I'm really pumped.
Awesome. I appreciate you guys sharing. For all of you that shared, I know some of you had a great day and didn't get a chance to say anything, but I appreciate that. Thanks for letting us in on what happened at your church over the weekend. We have one quick announcement, and then I'm going to turn it over to Steve Miller, who's with us today. The big webinar that we've got, how to influence and incorporate and interact with the LGBTQ community. That's coming up as a webinar on June 7th. And my understanding is that for those of you who are official members, there is no charge for that. That is something that is going to be a webinar that we're being charged for. But for you guys that are in the system, that are with us, that's not going to be any additional cost for you. So I did want to make sure you were aware of that on June 7th. In fact, the whole month of June, we're really targeting that particular topic for all 4 of those weeks in the month of June. So mark your calendars for that, Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern in June. But the big one's going to be June 7th on that Tuesday. So I wanted to make you aware of that. Steve Miller is our friend. He actually did a talk for us not too long ago, and we've got him here again. I'm going to turn things over to Steve on the concept of getting better before getting bigger. All of us want to get a little bit bigger, and sometimes we need to get a little bit better first. And so, Steve, I appreciate you being with us today. I'll turn it over to you from here. Thanks again.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. I honestly wish that we could have changed up the topic today and done a topic called Tell Me About Easter, because I would have been much more interested in hearing about that than about what I'm talking about. So, but I think in some ways it kind of ties in, because the truth is that Easter was awesome in a lot of ways for a lot of people. But the hard truth is that Sunday is coming, right? And there's another Sunday coming, and we've got 51 more Sundays. And I shared on Idea Day, I said, I love hearing and seeing all the aggressiveness and intentionality and effort that's put on Easter. I just said, I would love for us to continue that every Sunday, that we would have that Easter mindset every single Sunday, because next Sunday is someone's first Sunday. And even though they didn't come on Easter, maybe they got a flyer, they're going to come. And so I think sometimes it's like this mentality that we have, like, it's like, okay, let's gear up for something. And then let's just kind of like coast for about 6 months until we have to gear up again. Cause we're thinking about Christmas Eve now, right? Or whatever. And so I would just say that this is where I think this talk comes in. And honestly, there's so many thoughts I have and so many thoughts that I'm still processing. So I'm really just going to kind of share like my story a little bit of kind of where we were as a church and kind of how we implemented this mindset of better before bigger and excellence that has helped us, and it might help you in some way. So number one is, I'll give you some context. So I pastor in Loudoun County, Virginia. Heritage Baptist Church is in Loudoun County. Right next to Loudoun County is Fairfax County, Virginia. And then right below Fairfax County is Falls Church And if you were to Google that, you would find that Loudoun County and Fairfax County and Falls Church are in the top 3 of the wealthiest counties in America. So people make more money there than any other county. Matter of fact, Loudoun County is number 1, like, and our church is in the heart of that. So people make more money. The average median income, it depends on what survey you look at, but probably between 120,000, 140,000, something like that, median income. Very wealthy, very affluent, the wealthiest place to live in America. And so in our context, when it comes to excellence, we kind of don't have a choice. We kind of have to be excellent because the expectation in our area is excellence. People send their kids to really excellent schools. They drive really nice cars. They live in beautiful homes. And there's an excellence factor in so this is somewhat of where this is birthed from, contextualizing our area and saying, okay, what do we need to do? Now, I took over the church about a year and 10 months ago. And we were averaging, I took over in the middle of COVID. We were probably averaging about 50 people. So just less than 2 years later, like we averaged just over, like we had 123 2 Sundays ago. We had almost 170 on Easter, many visitors. Probably like 85% of the people in our church have attended our church less than a year. So all new people, lots of sustainable growth. So for us, we had to approach this because the church was not excellent when I took it over, in the sense of it was dated, it was old, it was a very small-minded, insular type of church that they were very happy with who was coming. The statement that people would say to me, it's like a family reunion every Sunday, which was code for no one new ever comes, right? And so we had to switch it, but we could not become a church that reached people with the current culture that we had, because the reason why they weren't reaching people was because of the current culture that they had. And so a lot of times what we do is we focus on trying to getting people in, but we get them to look in, but when they come in, they don't stay because overall it's not an excellent, we're not doing things as well as we could. Okay. So with that being said, I would say this, that when it comes to like a smaller church, especially, traditionally smaller churches are known in some key areas for not doing things well, right? So like number 1 would be music, right? So most of the time a small church has bad music. This was the case in the church that I took over. The music was absolutely horrible and atrocious. And I would say that if every one of those members were on this call right now, because there's no other way around it. It was horrible. It was atrocious. I took over, and 1 week we had the bad music, and the next day we moved out our song leader, and he no longer led the singing, and I did a hostile takeover of the music. That's how bad it was. We had singers holding babies on the stage because their baby didn't want to go in the nursery, so they had to hold them. And we had some mix of live music and track music. It just depended on how the flow of the service went. And it was just it was a mess. So notoriously, smaller churches are known for bad music, sometimes, older facilities. We had all of that. We probably had about 25 FICA plants. We had, I could tell you every theme of VBS because all the murals were up around the property of the VBS that they did in the past. Very proud of that. We had green pews with stains on it. We had mold in almost everywhere. It was a bad situation. And so we had that type of church in the wealthiest county in America. And so we had to adjust. And that's where a lot of these thoughts come from, was just sitting down sometimes in my car, like crying, saying, how in the world would anybody come to this church? Because I'm the pastor and I wouldn't come to this church, right? And so we had to begin to process. And so how did we do that? How did we go from, and how are we doing that to become better before bigger? So here's kind of some thoughts that we did. Number 1, we had to identify the problem. Okay, what is causing us not to be excellent? I get many calls from pastors who are just starting in churches, and they'll say to me like, "Hey, how did you transition from, where you were to where you are. And I've said this on the call before, but we've changed everything in our church. So from music to Bible version to draft, everything has changed in less than 2 years. We're a completely different church. We tell people that come in, we say, we were Dunkin' Donuts and now we're Starbucks, which is, by the way, so much better. Okay. We serve the same thing, just a whole different environment. That's what we say, whole different environment. And so we change everything. And so I get calls and guys will tell me, they'll say, I'm dealing with this problem, or I'm dealing with this situation, or I'm dealing with this kind of sacred cow. How do I do it? And I say, when you talk about identifying the problem as the pastor, you're going to look at everything as the problem. You're going to be like, okay, our music isn't good. Our decor is old. Our website is bad. We don't have enough volunteers. And you're going to be like, okay, in order for us to become better, we just need to shut the church down, buy a tent, move across the street and start over. That's going to solve all of our problems. But I would say in identifying the problem, you have to identify, here's the key. What is the thing that is hurting the church the most? What is the thing that's hurting the church? So the fact that you have like green pews may not be hurting you as bad as you think it is. We saw a lot of growth and a lot of people come in and a lot of people added to the church with green pews. But there were other areas that were hurting the church that literally, because it was happening this way, it was keeping people from coming. That's the problem you need to really identify. And you need to be honest with yourself. And honestly, can I say this? Identifying that problem means that everything's on the table. Like, for example, your preaching may be the reason why it might be hurting the church the most, because you think that you need to preach for an hour and 15 minutes and stand behind the pulpit. So when identifying the problem, you have to look at all things, all areas, and say, what is hurting the church? The other thing that you have to also, I think, understand, this is what I had to understand, is that leadership is not it's not just what you do, but it's also what you allow. That's a key thing. Leadership is not just what you do, it's what you allow. So as a leader, if you are allowing things not to get better, then in a sense, you are the one creating or allowing that problem to persist. So you can't get mad at something that you're allowing. I can get upset at the bad music when I came in, but I'm the pastor. And so if I can sit there and be upset and tell my wife how I wish the music would change, or I can just lead and change the music. And so you have to look at and say, okay, what am I allowing to happen in the church that is causing it to hurt the church? And how do I address that? Okay, so identify the problem, and then here's where the excellence comes in. How do we get better before bigger? Getting better before bigger is not necessarily making a change, but it's implementing a process for that change to happen. That's where the excellence comes in. So I'll say it this way: excellence is not discovered, it's developed. Excellence is not discovered. I know, like, as a pastor, like, I would be when in the early days, I was like, okay, dear Lord, please let us reach like a family that has prior ministry experience, Bible college education, has a golden voice, and the dude can play the guitar. Because if we could find that family, man, we would become excellent like overnight, And so like, there were like times where a family would come in the church and I'd be like, hey, I'm Steve. Thanks for coming 1 week. Do you play any instruments, or this is your first time in a church? Have you been in church before? Right? Because I'm trying to discover excellence, but it's not. Excellence is not discovered, it's developed. And where you're going to get better is not when you get better people or get a better facility or get better music. You're going to get better when you get better at the processes that develop those things. And so for us, we had to look at, okay, how do we, it's not about what we wanted to do, it's about how we went about getting it done. So if I were to poll everybody right here and say, okay, what needs to change in your church? You'd be like, oh, this needs to change. Nobody has to tell you what needs to change. the challenge is not knowing what to do. The challenge is knowing how to go about getting it done. That is the challenge. That's where the leadership comes in. So excellence is when you implement a process that allows you to get the results that you want. Okay, so in our context, we had really bad music. We had to do some hostile takeover things that, depending on your context, I would say do it or not do it, but it was hurting us. So what we did was we implemented a process in our church where you have to audition in order to be on the music team. And we make no bones about that. We don't try to code it and say, oh, it's a jam session, or let's sit down and come over to my house. I want you to bring your guitar. So in our membership process, this is what we did. We developed a membership process that in that process, when we talk about serving, we have 2 areas of serving. You can serve at Heritage in 2 areas. Number 1, a support area. A support area is where you support a team or an event. So we just had our egg hunt. We had people serve in a support role in the egg hunt. Helping in children's ministry is the support area. But the other area that we have is what we call our skills area. And so you can serve in a support area or a skills area. And what we say about the skills area is you actually have to have the skill in order to serve in the area. And so we tell them, like, we say to them, we have auditions for music. And this is not like members that like have been in our church for like years. This is like our people that have come to our church for like 2 weeks. We'll say to them, listen, if you want to try out for music, you can. We do have tryouts. We do ask you to send a video of yourself singing or playing. And I tell them, I will be Simon Cowell and American Idol and tell you that you're not going to Hollywood. I literally say those words in our membership process. And I say to them, if you try out for a skill area and we reach out to you and want to take you to coffee, it's probably because we want to try to move you very kindly to a support area. So don't fight us on that. Now, you could say, well, that's cruel, that's rude. Again, it's the process that we've developed, and everyone gets it. And I'll say this, because notoriously in a small church, you know what happens. And every time I say that, somebody smiles and they say, I know exactly what you're talking about, Pastor, right? Because here's the thing, sometimes in a small church, we think because we're small, I'm going to say this, I know it's recorded, I'm going to say this very strongly. I think sometimes we think because we're small, it's okay to suck, right? And I'm going to say that is not how God intended that. Big churches aren't big because when they were small, they were bad. Big churches are larger because when they were small, they focused on processes that allowed them to develop excellence and be good stewards. And it's a sustainable thing, not a sensational thing. So that's what so how do we get bigger before better? You have to implement a process in whatever area that you want to have a goal, and you have to identify that. And the other thing I would say, last thing I would say, and I'll be done, is this, is you have to have honest evaluation. So what I would suggest, and we do this, and we're continuing to do this, is that I would suggest if you have a trusted advisor, one of your friends, somebody, even someone on the call, reach out to one of the pastors and say, hey, when you get a minute, can you watch my live stream? Can you watch our service and give me your honest feedback? Because I'll say this, if you don't know, then you'll never be able to grow. If you don't know, then you'll never be able to grow. And so we have in a couple months, we have a guy coming into our church. He's with a network of churches. He's coming in, and his sole reason to come in is to evaluate our service, our Sunday experience. He's going to come in. We're not even going to announce that he's there. He's just going to be a regular visitor, and he's just going to evaluate. And I'm getting ready to put my big boy pants on to get hit in the face a couple times about what he has to say. But that's what it takes. It takes identifying the problem, implementing the process, and then being open to honest evaluation. And I would say, just to say this one more time, and I'll be quiet, and then I appreciate the time, is that you have to be willing to do whatever it takes to change, including your sermon. You have to. One of the things that we most evaluate at our church is my sermon, is my preaching. After every service, I ask certain people, how was that? How did I come across? How did I sound? Because you can't think that everything else is the problem except what you're doing. Because sometimes that's where we can get stuck and miss it. So I would, again, these are just some thoughts, honestly. We're still learning, and there's still areas in our church where we have to get better, and we're not good at all. But we kind of have a way that we are trying to move that helps us to know that if we start to implement processes and honestly evaluate, then we can get better. And in getting better, we will get bigger. Why? Because we're not trying to build a big church. And this is what we say in our membership process. We're not trying to build a big church. We're trying to minister to the next person who walks through the door. That's what we're trying to do. And we believe that if we'll be good stewards of ministering to the next person who walks through the door, then God will send us more people through the door. And so that's some thoughts there. And I appreciate the time and look forward to the conversation to follow.
Great. Thanks, Steve. I appreciate you sharing that. I took a lot of notes, and guys were throwing some of those fire quotes into the chat as well. Hey, the questions, let me get to these questions real quick, and I'm going to put them into the chat here. What is an area in your ministry that is lacking in excellence? Question 2, how have you implemented processes to make an area of your ministry better? And then question 3, what is one resource that has helped develop excellence in your ministry? Those are our discussion questions. We're going to break out right now into 3 rooms, and then we'll meet back here to recap in a few minutes. Thanks, guys.
Morris is the chat king, or the quote king today, recording all of the quotes for us. So we'll give everybody just a second to jump on. Probably have 7 or 8 guys in here. Jason, how many do we have in here today?
You know, I'm not sure. I want to say it was about 8 per room, but everybody
All right,
had to
cool.
accept an invite. So we'll see. It looks like we've got 7 in here right now. So maybe 1 or 2 more might join in.
All right, guys, let's go ahead and we can get started. Of course, man, a great topic today, right? Every one of us can have better development and excellence in our ministry. So let's just jump into these questions and see if we can't help each other. Number 1, what's an area in your ministry that you feel is lacking in excellence? Who wants to go first and chime in? Something that you think you can grow in, area of ministry that can change to your local context. Not everybody all at once.
I'll jump in, Dennis.
Go ahead, Morris.
Hey, so to answer the question from earlier, we had 30 connection cards turned in. So that's what we turned in. One of the hooks I used just to answer Steve's question from earlier was I teamed up with Chick-fil-A, and Dan gave us, the owner of Chick-fil-A, gave us a stack of gift cards, and I was able to give those away to anyone that turned in a connection card. So that was a way to kind of get those turned in. So I thought that was excellent. Areas to grow that we're lacking. I think, like Steve said, we've really tried to think of every area. I think our kids ministry, we could develop better. Our teen group, right now, my wife and I are running that about once a month, but we're looking to get, someone to help us, develop that better, even implementing something on Sundays. We did this for Easter, but I want to grow our ushers group and also our connections, just from first impressions. So from the parking lot all the way in. And so those are some big, rocks that we're trying to identify and kind of hone in. I'm taking the guys up to a leadership conference up here in the Sacramento area, and hopefully we'll iron some of this out. But those are some areas for us.
Great. Somebody else, what's an area that you've seen that you think you could develop better excellence in? I know for us, I always feel like we, of course, ministry's been my life. So reevaluating ministry every week is kind of what you do when you're a church planter and in a church planter's home. So For us, though, I think follow-up would be huge right now. We kind of hit this point, probably like you guys do after Easter and Christmas, where you're just kind of like, all right, every 6 months, I got to reevaluate, or Easter and Thanksgiving, got to reevaluate our follow-up. So that's an area I feel like we could probably do a little bit better. So somebody else, what's something you think, an area you're lacking in some excellence, and maybe even today after Steve talked, you thought, my music probably could grow. Anybody got anything? Walter, how about you?
Actually, I'm trying to think of an area that I don't need to grow in excellence.
Yeah, that's probably all of us, right? We're thinking, maybe I could name one I don't need to grow in, but
Yeah, we got 12 members and a big property. Yeah, we're kind of regrowing.
all right.
Everything.
Adam, what about you guys?
I'm with Morris. Our first impressions is really gotta step up. We got a new building here, and we had our largest attendance we've had since we got in the new building this past Sunday, and we had ushers in the back that had no idea what they were doing when it came to try to get people to their seats. So so Pastor and I really stepped back and kind of like, okay, we noticed that we need to do some training and do some leadership things with that. Another big thing is our kids ministry as well. We just need to do a better job of keep on promoting them and keep on doing things that allows them to continue after our kids are they get past elementary age, get into teenage, and continue on into that.
Yeah. Well, guys, let's go to the second question, because I think this will bring out quite a bit of discussion. But the question is, how have you implemented processes to make an area of your ministry better? Really, I would just say, kind of think back. All of us, many have been pastoring for years that are in this group right here or on staff at a church. Think back to areas that you looked at and you saw your music or kids ministries, registration, follow-up, whatever it is, you needed to grow. What did you do to help that get to where it is now? And maybe what are some steps that you implemented? What's your processes that you put into place? Anybody have anything that you would look at and say, you know what, I remember when, this part of ministry was not good and we've grown it, and here's how. I'm gonna throw it out to Ryan. Ryan, what do you think, man?
Yeah, I think it starts with leadership development. One of the things we did is we signed on and started using Ministry Grid a few years ago, which is a development for senior level leaders of ministries, and volunteers. And it just kind of forces us once or twice a year. We try to go in and onboard, of course, new volunteers, and then train existing people on a topic that we want to improve on. And we try to have one measurable in each ministry, an area that we try to keep track of how we're doing. So that kind of has helped us be a little more focused on excellence and just kind of create the atmosphere when someone comes on, that there is expectations, there is training, there are role descriptions. And I think that's been the biggest thing for us.
Yeah, what was the name of that?
It's Ministry Grid. It's by Lifeway. It's all online training. A lot of it's templates that they've already put together, but you can go in and you can edit and create your own documents, videos, and organize it in different ways.
You said Ministry Grid, Grid. Okay. Thanks, man. That's a great resource. You jumped ahead to the third question, but that's great. So somebody else, what's an area of your ministry that you guys, that you've improved? Jason, what about you, man? I know being on staff, I know you guys probably do this quite a bit, reevaluating and stuff like that.
Yeah, we had one of the issues that we were having was we would have new people come in, and there was a clear point of membership, and we call it a first steps class that usually lasts 8 or 9 weeks that we do. And then once they go through the process, they join as members, and there was no clear step after joining as members before finding a way to plug in and serve. And so one of the things we started doing as a process is we will have ministry leaders who will come in to the last few minutes of each first steps class and share, hey, here's my ministry, here's what we do, here's how you can get involved. And then I usually take the last night and just share the ministries I'm involved in. And I really push small groups, because that's really how people connect in their church. I mean, Tom Rainer will say that the number one reason people leave a church is because they don't feel connected. And so here we are We've done the work of getting them to come, being attractive enough to keep them here, and then convincing them to join. And now that they've done that, now what do I do? And so we're trying to find ways to connect them into specific ministries or discipleship programs, things like that. And so we've really incorporated that into our First Steps program, where it's kind of like, this is the second step. This is what you do next to actually get involved in serving and ministry and things like that. So that's one process we've implemented that's worked very well for us.
How have you seen people kind of, for lack of better terms, kind of latch onto that or catch that and move forward with it as well?
I think most people that will come to a new church and go through an 8-week First Steps class, they're not just looking to become pedestrian members. You know, they want to connect, they want to dive in. So I would say 75% of people respond really well to that. And for those that don't, you know, they'll get as much out of church as they put into it, you know? And so we'll see them a little bit here and there, and they're just looking to latch on to something that'll tether them to our church. But really, I would say 3/4 of people that will go through that process will sign on to participate in a ministry or serve here. Like, one of the things Steve talked about was a skill area and a support area. I think that's so simplistic, but very well said, that you do have people that have different giftings, and some, you know, would be more in a skill area, while others who don't have certain skills would be great in a support area. But we've seen probably 3/4 of our people that have come through that First Steps class really take the next step into getting on board with a ministry, finding an area to serve in, jumping in a connect group. And so I think it's had a pretty good success rate, but I mean, it's not perfect, but it's probably been the best process that's worked for us along those lines.
Hey, somebody else, what's an area that you saw lacking excellence? You implemented some steps and helped it grow. Somebody got something?
Dennis, I'll say that when I got here, the two biggest things we had to get right was music. We were going more from a traditional to a blended style type worship setting, and then we went. Our audio visual need to be improved greatly. Now, the great thing was, once again, we were going to a new building, but the music, and I love what Stephen said. What he said, the challenge is, how do we get this done? And that was the challenge here. Was it couldn't be something that was quickly done. So we identified the folks who we could implement a praise team with. We started practicing before we even got in a new building. We started, because it was something that was going to be brand new for this locale, small backwoods country church that wasn't used to this type of music. So it was a process to get that to them, and started to put things out there through social media, through our Facebook, to start introducing songs to people. And then when it came to audio visual, what we've done last year is we have just, you know, really put a lot of expectations on those who work in our sound team, and say, hey, if you do live stream, if you do the soundboard, if you do ProPresenter, stage lights, all these things, we want feedback from you. What's working well, what's not working well, and really, you know, let them have ownership in what they're doing. And so we meet quarterly now, on a quarterly basis. We talk through what's going well, what's not going well. The resources we started using was Planning Center. That's the biggest thing we started using when it came to something like that. And it's allowed people to know what's going on ahead of time than walking in on Sunday morning and just seeing, hey, what the order of service is.
Yeah, that's great. Planning Center is a huge help to a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
So, hey, Russ, what about you? What's some areas that you guys have seen maybe struggling in and wanted to grow in?
Yeah, for us this year, it's kind of developing some more ministry teams. And for instance, we've started up kind of a missions team, better evaluate, our missionaries, but also then to be a greater word and responding to their prayer requests, bringing them to our congregation, because missions is a big part of work. So that's been something that a month and a half or so been very helpful. As far as like on the membership side, the way we do it, we're a small. We have between 7 Sunday, a good Easter, but that was And what I'm able to do is in our membership that we do is people come to my home and we breakfast and lunch. We talk about the doctrine, what we believe. We talk about what it means to be a healthy person, what it means to be a member. Nobody's able to join unless they indicate what ministries they have been. And then off of that gives me a roadmap how to develop certain. And really, honestly, we've had great involvement for those that we don't do an 8-week thing, but we do spend about like 5 hours, roughly 5 hours time front. And of course, then there's the stuff outside. That's been really good for our contact. And plus, I like being able to say, hey, sure.
Yeah, that sounds, what I caught of that, you broke up a little bit, but what I caught about that, man, it sounds great. And people who jumping in for 5 hours, it's like the 8-week program. They're going to be committed and like all in, you know. Hey, let me ask this. I just want to kind of throw this out as an extra question, but what's been, you know, we all have areas that we change and grow in and strive for excellence in. But the question I want to throw out is what's been the, maybe some of the biggest challenges that you faced in creating an environment of excellence, and how'd you overcome that? So Adam, you're talking about your music. Adam, you just said your music was an issue. Morris, I know for you guys, you know, follow-up for you years ago was really a struggle, and outreach. And so, you know, you guys you've all kind of crossed these bridges in certain areas. So what was the biggest challenge, and what helped you kind of overcome that?
I'll go first if you want, Dennis.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so the biggest thing, like Steve said, and I'll say it, we had an older congregation that were stuck on themselves, and a lot of what we did sucked, all right? Just bottom line. And so we relooked at everything, and I'm just going to give you the bullets that I wrote down. And I know this is all about like marketing, but really the smell, the look, the feel, the music, our dress, our style. Even when people have walked in, this happened on Sunday, people said, man, this is not what I thought a Baptist was. So even changing their perspective, the services we do. One of the hardest things, Dennis, that we did is we stopped Sunday night, and you know who my biggest push against it was? My wife.
Your wife.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, and the people that had been here a lot longer and around, you know, the Baptist world, but I'm telling you, once we gave that back to the church, they said it was a game changer, because my focus was, we're gonna do the best we can in our Sunday morning experience from start to finish. And from that one emphasis, then we built upon everything. So really everything that Steve said, but I had to be laser focused. When people came, this might be the only opportunity. Then we did our website, my teaching, my content, my length of message. I mean, I'm telling you, I re-look at it and re-looking at it. And not that we have it made, but these are all, every area is what we looked at and trying to implement and change. So.
Yeah, somebody else, what's been maybe your biggest challenge, and how'd you overcome something? Walter, I know you guys are just kind of going through all of that, being new there just in the last couple of years. So what's some challenges you faced as you've tried to reach for excellence in an area?
So, what I do is I look and I watch and I see something specifically during the service, and if I see something that was, to me, seemed like a complete failure, like a worship service where the musicians didn't know the songs, people didn't know what they were singing, I kind of gave them like a couple chances. Like they got 3 strikes, and then there was a big change. And then let's say it's good to have thick skin sometimes. So those were, getting chewed out repeatedly can wear you down a little bit, but that's probably the challenge, is really what's helped me. And since then, going forward, just having a process this is what we're going to do every week. Practice is a requirement. We need to get a certain amount of practice in. if we do something and it's not good enough when we practice, then something else needs to be done before the service. Just making sure that preparations are made a week or two in advance. I tell the team, we have a team, and our goal is to have everything prepared 2 weeks in advance, at least on like say the worship side. And they're not always 2 weeks in advance. I want them to be at least 1 week ahead. But if they're 2 weeks, that's even better.
Yeah, that's good, man. Somebody else, what's one of the challenges you face in it and in striving for excellence? Maybe what's something that helped you overcome that? I know Walter kind of hit that on the head, man, with people, right? People kind of not wanting change and thinking, maybe not even seeing the excellence that you're trying to bring in, and giving you that scolding, the way things were. But it's exciting to see God use, I think, the things that we implement to help grow people, and they see the benefit of it. And, they're the ones that come, a lot of times they're the ones that come back 2 months, 3 months, a couple years later and say, man, I see what we did and I love it. They're your biggest fan. So somebody else, what's something you've done? Ryan, Russ, Jason, Adam, something you've done to create excellence and the challenge you faced in it, and what you did to overcome it.
And it's also this when it came to the music side of me. When I first got here, they'd already had transitioned over to, they had the hymn book still in the pews, but they had the words on the screen. And so one of the first questions I remember was about 3 or 4 families that walked up to me and they said, "You're going to bring the hymn books back, right? We're going to get rid of the screen and we're going to use the hymn books." And I was kind of like, no. In fact, I told them, I said, let's just get rid of the hymn books. I mean, I just told them, I said, we're going to sing songs that everybody knows, number one. And when it came down to it, I asked them, I said, what is your biggest fear when it comes to new music? What doesn't sound the same as the old stuff? Or there's a large, church that here in South Carolina, they got to have a local, it's called New Spring, and they're just all over South Carolina. And they're like the hip hop church, and like, we don't want all the stage lights, we don't want the ball machines, we don't want all that kind of stuff. And number one, I'm not going to be a cheap imitation of somebody else. That's just that we're going to be who we're supposed to be. I mean, for goodness sake, our name is Lake Swamp. I mean, we can't do much. We can't do much. Anything really without getting away from the country so much. But so it was a matter of people seeing what is so important is us making sure that we sing songs that glorify God, that promote the gospel, that promote scripture. And I think one of the best things that really helped our church out is when we started implementing, I think we talked about this a few months back, we started implementing scripture reading into our worship service. And man, just bringing that and emphasizing that and how that, yeah, God can still use songwriters now, just like he did a long time ago. And he's still using people. So talking through those things with people and showing how they connect back to the Word of God, that's been one of the biggest things that I've been able to hit from a challenge part head on.
Yeah, man, it's interesting. I know we all could speak into this, but when you just go back to Scripture, like people, oftentimes people get it. Something, probably for us, the challenges along the way. Of course, we're a little bit different because I planted our church, so all the problems that have happened have been by my own doing or just bad leadership or something like that. But, people along the way, even that come in and they have their own preferences and things like that, just pointing them back to Scripture and like, hey, this is all about glorifying God and reaching people with Christ, loving God and loving people. Let's boil it down to that. And what can we do better? So let's do this last question. What's a resource that helped you develop excellence in your ministry? I loved, you mentioned Ministry Grid with Lifeway. For us, it may not be a resource, but we do it every week, is our staff meetings. And we do like post-action staff meetings. And so like today, we'll have a staff meeting here. It's 11:50 on the West Coast. So at 1:30, I've got staff meeting today, and we'll talk through everything positive and everything negative from the last 2 weeks, build up to Easter, the hunt, our Easter services, what we like, what we not like, and then how can we improve that? I think even if you just have a leadership team, not your staff, but just a leadership team that you're meeting with on a Sunday night saying, hey, what can we do with better? What can we do better? I think that's a great resource. So what's something else you guys have used, a resource to help you grow in this area?
Dennis, do you have like a survey that you have or use?
No, honestly, I just sit down, like today, I'll just sit down and say, all right, the hunt, what do we like? What do we not like? What do we want to do again? What do we think we aren't ever going to do again? And then we just sit down and talk through it. Of course, I tell all the staff, everybody's got to have thick skin because we're probably going to be, somebody's in charge of that area that you're about to blast. So, you gotta not take it personally. So somebody else, what's a resource that you've used? I would say if you haven't read the book, Be Our Guest by Disney, that'd be incredible. Or probably one of the best books on leadership and excellence is a book called Excellence Wins by Horst Schultz. He's the founder of the Ritz-Carltons. Phenomenal book, huge help to help you strive for excellence in certain areas. Starts with Why by Simon Sinek, another great book on it. That's a good book. So somebody else, you got another resource?
Another book to piggyback off of the ones you just gave is Good to Great by Jim Collins. Yep. It's an old one and it's written to CEOs, but when you're running a church, that's what you're doing. And he has this analogy where he talks about getting the right people on the bus and then getting the right people in the right seats on the bus. And I think if you have a staff of 1 or 2, or you have a staff of 15, go through a book together as a staff and talk about that on a regular basis. That's something that we try and do. Our executive pastor picks a book or 2 a year that we read together. But something like Good to Great, I think, is a phenomenal resource of kind of just taking you from where you are to the next level, whatever that is in your context.
Yeah. And then he wrote a follow-up on that one of How the Mighty Fall.
Yep.
It's a good one too. And then there's a couple of great books. One's called Mission Drift. If you guys haven't read that, Mission Drift, it's like Good to Great and How the Mighty Fall in one. Great book by Peter Greer and Chris Forst. And then a great book for churches to evaluate excellence. It's a super simple read. I gave it to all our staff a couple of years ago. It's called Unwelcome. And it's 50 things that churches do wrong or could do better. I forget what the undertitle of it. 50 ways churches drive away first-time guests or first-time visitors. That's what it was. So that's a great little book. Somebody else, you got a resource on this?
Just from a podcast standpoint, it's not always this way, but 9 Marks Pastor Talks has some great podcast episodes at times that really talk through some of this stuff as well.
Somebody else, you got a resource? Well, real quick, anybody have, we got about a minute and a half left. You got anything to add into this? Just the topic of excellence, maybe something that came to your mind, a key thought that you have that you would just want to throw in?
I got a quote that I'll share. You guys were all sharing Steve's quotes. This was a dating quote that I was told at West Coast Baptist College by Toby Weaver. And I think it applies to churches too, is he once said, you don't attract what you want, you attract who you are. And he used that in the context of dating, but I think it's so true with churches. We all want to attract, the people who are trendy and the people who are excellent. And if we're not excellent ourselves, why would we think we could gain some of those people? And so I immediately thought about that while Steve was talking. That was a fire quote from college that I've never forgotten. And so I thought that was good and had the application here too.
Yeah, it's great, man. Somebody else, just a last minute thought?
Our pastor and I always talk about this as excellence is the key because, the Lord deserves our best. So we ought to give our best every single week, not just, I love what Stephen said at the very beginning. Easter is, that's just 1 week. We got 51 other weeks that we have to do our best to reach that one that comes that time.
Yeah, that's good. Morris, you unmuted yourself. Go for it.
Yeah, I think what Jason said, I tell our church, if something's not important to you, like let's say going to church is not going to be important to your kids. And I think if in the area of excellence, if it's not important to us, it's not going to be important to anybody else. So, I think that kind of applies kind of exactly what Jason said. So I think just do things excellent and God will bring them. It's his anyway. He'll do it.
Yeah. Well, guys, it's been great. One last thing I'll say is just ask yourself, what would Jesus do differently if he were pastoring here? Because, you know, you want him to work through you and he would change some things. So strive for it. We'll jump back into the main room and we'll finish this up, guys.
All right, we're all coming back into the main room. Hope you had good discussion in your breakout rooms. I'm going to turn it over to our three moderators that led discussion, and I'm going to go ahead and pin you guys or add spotlight here. Dennis, I'm going to start with you. If you could just give us a 30 to 60 second recap of your room and what we missed by not being there.
Yeah, I think had some great discussions today. Really just the three questions and then the fourth question we asked had a lot of really good thoughts about what guys have faced and their challenges, and that every one of us need to strive for excellence in every area of ministry. A couple of things that were said, just remembering that our leadership is key in leading for excellence. And then Jason Schuler was in there, mentioned this: you don't attract what you want, you attract who you are. And of course, he was referencing dating, but definitely applies to ministry and how we do things. And then, man, a ton of great resources, Ministry Grid by Lifeway to help shape leaders. And then, you know, doing recap meetings with your leadership teams, bunch of books that were offered. Just a few of them: Good to Great by Jim Collins, Excellence Wins by Horst Schultz, Be Our Guest from Disney, the book Unwelcome, and Mission Drift. And then, of course, the 9 Marks podcast has a lot on leadership. And then, of course, the Idea Talks podcast. Josh addresses a lot of this and excellence in certain areas. So it was really good, encouraging to me today. So look forward to hearing from the other guys.
Great thoughts. Philip, I'm going to kick it to you. Give us 60 seconds of your room.
It was a great discussion, wonderful topic today, and just of course started out talking about different areas where we need to grow. And one of the things that was mentioned was empower the people that are leading those ministries to make a difference. We, as pastors, we don't have to be the one to have all the plans and all the ideas and all, but we can let the people who are leading those ministries develop a process and lead in that way. And so that was really helpful. Also, we talked about Ministry Grid, what an excellent resource that is, and Sign Up Genius, a way for people to be able to volunteer and schedule their time for serving. So it was a great time. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Philip. Nick?
Yeah, so on the first question, probably the weakest area, the area we need to change most was consistently kind of our groups, whether it be community groups or Sunday school, seeing some, some weak areas there. For some, coming out of COVID and trying to get people reconnected and getting that going forward. That was kind of our biggest challenge. As far as some of the processes, I mentioned us kind of having a culture of critique, and really it's just kind of being intentional about kind of like what Steve was talking about, whether if it's taking things over, almost like a hostile takeover, but just kind of implementing the right things. It was mentioned implementing the right leadership to help implement that process. And then Akeem mentioned the crew leader guide that they have, really, that walks people through a full process. He said actually he's going to be sharing next week, and it's going to be walking through that guide, so that it's going to be helpful, because we all asked if he could send that to us. And then just some of the resources, it was mentioned the Idea Network, and then just friendships, people that we can kind of talk to and get feedback from, And then also Deep and Wide was mentioned as a very helpful resource as well.
Awesome. Thank you three for moderating the rooms. Special thanks to Steve Miller for just a great topic today. Really enjoyed the talk, really enjoyed the discussion. And Steve, thanks so much for putting time into that, being with us today. Very practical, helpful stuff. And then thanks to each of you for joining us today, especially coming after the Easter holiday. Appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. We'll be back here next Tuesday, same time, same place. Hope you guys have a great week this week, thinking outside the box. Take care, guys. Have a good week.